Hello everyone, I am Jean Fransanito and I am tasked to report about changing school culture. Let's have first the objectives. K. Identify culture, school culture, and change. S. Develop leadership skills as future educators in how to change school culture. A. Reflect the importance of leaders in changing school culture. Educators are constantly dealing with change as they strive to respond their students' and societal needs. Their success in these ventures lies in the changing individual components of school structures in isolation but by changing the whole culture. Lata 2006. As Naylor 2006 argues, culture and change are interrelated and constantly influence each other either negatively or positively, with the latter culminating into school improvement, which should be the hallmark of the change process. Deal and Peterson 2009 defined culture as a shared stream of norms, values, traditions, and rituals built up over time. In 2010, Skeen considers it as a set of expectations and assumptions that are shared by members of an organization that direct the activities of school personnel and students. School culture is one of the most complex and important concepts in education. In 1985, page 6, Skeen considers the basic essence of an organization's culture to be the deeper level of basic assumptions and beliefs that are shared by members of an organization that operate unconsciously and that define, in a basic, taken-for-granted fashion, an organization's view of itself and its environment. These are the heart of the school culture and what makes it so hard to grasp and change. In primary schools, care and control influence their culture such that when students leave the school, there is feeling that have left a family. However, in secondary school culture, it is influenced not only by larger size and department structures, but by the very fundamental nature of teachers' academic orientation and the fragmented individualism that students experience in moving from one subject and teacher to another. School culture is influenced by school's community, including the students' parents, who have their own conceptions of what a real school is. Political and economic forces or changes in national policies can also influence what is valued at school. Throughout 1997 argues that the social mix of the school plays a major role in how it functions, largely because of the cumulative effects of how students relate to each other as a group. Essentially, students who attend the school flavor it in a particular way, through their own student culture. Change has been described as an adoption of an innovation where the ultimate goal is to improve the outcomes through alteration of practices. Changes in society. Changes in society pose challenges to a school's culture. Changes might relate to learning, the student's population, organizational management, and rapid technological developments or other societal changes. Such changes often demand rapid responses from a school. Yet, while culture changes as participants change, it can also be a stabilizing force, particularly for those who have been part of the culture for a longer period. It can therefore appear problematic for those in search of quick fix changes because it often seems as thought it is an unmovable force. While culture presents, therefore, the paradox of both being static and dynamic, in reality, it is constantly evolving and being reconstructed. It has noted in Skeen 2010 that culture influences the choice of change and the change process determines the kind of culture to expect. Consequently, school culture and change are purported to be tightly intertwined. They are two sides of the same coin in that the school culture impacts change and the change process impacts school culture. What influences culture? Culture influences all aspects of school, such as how the staff dresses, what teachers talk in the staff room, their instructional methods, and their willingness to change. Culture describes how things and acts are in a screen or lens through which the world is viewed. In essence, It defines reality for those within the social organization, gives them support and identity, and creates framework for occupational learning. Each school has a different reality or mindset of school life, often captured in the simple phrase, the way they do things around here. It also has its own mindset in relation to what occurs in its external environment. Culture is, thus, situationally unique. School's culture is shaped by its history, context, and the people in it. In some cases, a new culture must be instituted that will accommodate change, and in order for change to be effected, the underlying culture of the school and the change must match. A school's age can impact cultural change. In the early years of a new school, dominant values emanate from its founders and the school makes its culture explicit. In the midlife, the most important aspects of the culture are embedded and taken for granted, and the culture is increasingly implicit. Change becomes more difficult because of less consciousness of the culture. It is harder to articulate and understand. Maturity and/or stagnation and decline is reached if the school has ceased growing and responding to its environment. This stage is most problematic from the cultural change perspective. School leaders play an important role in changing a school culture, and these are as follows. They try to understand the deeper meanings embedded in the school culture before trying to change it. They also uncover and articulate core values, looking for those that buttress what is best for students. Lastly, they try to understand those aspects of the culture that are destructive and those that are constructive. Thereafter, they work to fashion a positive context, reinforcing cultural elements that are positive and modifying those that are negative and dysfunctional. But how do we change the culture of schools? When it comes to lasting cultural change, four essentials are consistent across many leadership contexts. First, define what you will not change. Identify specific values, traditions, and relationships that you will preserve, rather than make every change a battle that exhausts political capital and diminishes trust. Effective leaders place change in the context of stability. As effective change leaders identify and build on traditions rather than compete with them. Second, recognize the importance of actions. Speech and announcements are not enough. To lead challenging reform efforts, you must be willing to make personal changes in decision-making policies, like who has the authority to decide what, personal time allocation, which meeting invitations do you accept and which do you decline, and collegial relationships. Do you make time to listen to personal stories of your colleagues? The greatest impediment to meaningful cultural change is the gap between what leaders say they value and what they actually do. Third is the use of the right change tools in your school or district. Christensen, Marks, and Stevenson 2006 differentiate culture tools such as rituals and traditions, power tools such as threats and coercion, management tools such as training, procedures, and measurement systems, and leadership tools such as role modeling and vision. Leaders must choose the appropriate change tools on the basis of a combination of factors, including the extent to which staff members agree on what they want and how to get there. The fourth and the last step is be willing to do the Scott work. In Mountains Beyond Mountains, the case of Dr. Paul Farmer, a man who would cure the world, Tracy Kidder 2004 describes a renowned infectious disease specialist and leader in international health care. Farmer has revolutionized the beliefs and practices of stakeholders ranging from the poorest rural villagers in Haiti to the faculty of Harvard Medical School to policymakers at the United Nations. Combining his extensive field experience with sophisticated research and medical analysis, Farmer has appended traditional notions of healthcare. What does Farmer cite as one of his secrets? The willingness to do unglamorous scat work. Although education leaders must make speeches and attend board meetings, leaders aspiring to change school cultures will take the risk. If you believe that every job has value and there is no such thing as unimportant work in schools, then you demonstrate that belief through your actions. From the discussion, we can conclude that school culture impacts on the change process and the change process impacts on the culture. During these interactions of school, culture, and change, the focus should be always on the school improvement.